believe Drew Ali. Now, let's look at it like this. Their stuff is falling apart. The Asiatic nations, loosely known as BRIC and MINT, that's the true American states, are the MINT nations, and BRICS are other Asiatic nations and other Europeans who want the republic back that are operatively, essentially trying to restore the republic. So they are cognitively dumping U.S. Treasury bonds, meaning that they're not accepting U.S. Treasury bonds for payment anymore, which means the merry-go-round is over. And so when people who don't understand this, when they go across this country and they start seeing these big malls closing and everything, and they start seeing all these empty warehouses that some of which they're turning into condos because they're no longer useful, things along this order, then of course they're finding consistent various times debits from their credit accounts, etc., those who keep records. And also people who are trying to get some benefit from their 4 nun caves and stuff like that, and finding that they can't even pull any large numbers of fiat out of their accounts, not knowing that it's not their account. All these things are being accelerated. So this is again why you're giving this information, because as this transfer is being made, there's a lot of people that may not have the capacity to survive the chaos that's by design being prepared for them.
Ms. Baum, if, I know what you said about not putting, large sums or keeping large amounts in the banks, but if you have fiat outside of the bank, though, what good is it?
They're going to inflate it.
Inflate it?
Yeah, they're going to inflate it.
When you say inflate the value?
No, this was going to happen. They're being forced to make the transfer. The agreement is, it is intelligent to do it in spite of the resistance of many cotton waves. For everybody's interest to do it organized, so that governments don't literally collapse, because over 55% of the, what you would call, and it's a misnomer, but we call monetary holdings, or the reserve in the treasuries of nation states are in U.S. treasuries, or what is known as the U.S. foreign imitation dollar, Federal Reserve, under the blackmail agreement made with Kissinger and Nixon in 1971, which they call the abrogation of the gold clause, which of course was already done in 1861. But but for the public's efforts, they keep saying these things because they know the public doesn't have this information except Masons. And even then, they get it in an allegorical story. You don't get it straight like this. But back to point. When you understand how this whole scenario was set up, all of the other economic and political shenanigans done, implied to be done, going to be done, you pretty much know them even before they're done, no matter what they say. You already know. This is the deal. Fiat that you have, if you have any amount of it, they will inflate it. And because, understand, it is, the Federal Reserve notes are really bookkeeping entries. They're not real money. But it's not, but let's explain it in a way so it can be best comprehended. When I was 19, when I got married, 19, I married my girlfriend in school. I had, I bought a house, I sharecropped a house in Parkside, in Camden. At that time, it was a gated community. and it was mostly Ashkenazi so-called Jews living there. And where I lived on Princess Avenue, 1246, there was only two other Asiatics in the block. There was one detective that worked for Camden, and as a matter of fact, one of my uncle's wives lived across the street, who was a cop. After 5, the gate would close, and if you didn't domicile in that community, you couldn't get in. They had to open the gates right there on Parkside, right on Mount Ethan Avenue. Very nice house. I had Van Sciver furniture. That's top shelf furniture. It used to be where that museum is, now that aquarium in Camden. Van Sciver was just sitting on that lot. And my dining room set had brass rails, real brass rails, that had crystal glass bevel. All the drawers were lined with imported velvet, sides and bottom. And at that time, that set cost 3,800 notes, 3,000, which was a lot of fiat at that time. I had little small pictures with, like this, where it was gold inlaid. They laid the gold onto the frame, like out of a matchbox. I used to see them do it, because that's what they did at Van Sciver's. And the guys sat in there, and they had little heat torches. And it comes in matchboxes. They take tweezers, and they spray the frame, and they lay it on, and they take a soft brush, like a makeup brush, and they pat it down in, and that's how the frame is done in the seal. Little frames, and they cost like 300 and some notes a piece at that time. I had little lamps, small lamps, like Moorish lamps, little dark lamps. They're still at my sister's house. And they cost $500 and some a piece. I had the imported lead crystal lamps, you know, I used to have with the marble, from Germany. I was 19 years old. I had a Chrysler Imperial Baron, and I had a Chrysler 300 SJ. Right? I was 19 years old. People used to come to my house, you know, for insurance stuff. Is your mom home? You know, see this big Imperial out here. And it was paid for. I was still paying for the Chrysler 300 SJ, but the Imperial was paid for. Now, both of them cars right now, I had that SJ. That SJ would auction about $200,000 now. It Hemi. The Imperial had a 413. It wasn't a Hemi, it was a 413, but I changed my radio from the steering wheel, from the floor, or from the dash. Seats were lounged. Now I had a Cadillac too before I had that, but that thing made the Cadillac like a Chevy. As a matter of fact, they used to tax the Imperials because the ornaments on them was considered jewels. That's one of the reasons why the Imperial wasn't continued to be produced, because it actually cost more produced than Cadillacs and Lincolns. And they taxed, it was like politics, but they actually taxed them, Chrysler out of business too. They stopped making the Imperials. But anyway, the point of it is, I was 19. Right now, I couldn't afford to live like I lived when I was 19. I couldn't afford either one of them cars right now. But number-wise, I transfer far more fiat in numbers than I did then. But I lived better then. I could go to Pathmark at that time on Mount Ethan Avenue, and 28 notes. I had my back seats full of groceries. So when you understand this, that's what inflation is. So, what else was it? This is the key. The fiat that you have in the bank, this is how they're going to do it. When they decide to come really open public, they're going to give you about roughly a 3-month cycle by which they will accept the Federal Reserve note for conversion into another, what they will call currency. Most likely renminbi, because they're creating renminbi hubs around the country. They already sent me one from China. I got one from China. This might be in there somewhere. Yeah, I got one. I know what they look like anyway. But anyway, you have 3 months to convert whatever you have. After that, no U.S. dollars will be allowed to buy any gold anywhere in the world. The U.S. Treasury bond is not, as we speak, being accepted in other countries. And so what's going to happen, the acceleration of your ship-to-shelf operations, which is the model that is used by Walmart as the #1 model, will eventually start showing up extremely fast. It's going to happen in fast succession. Meaning that because they don't have warehouses, it's always been ship-to-shelf. Now, when I was in California, in Long Beach, etc., I think this was last time we was talking before, Dean. When I saw the ships, they was backed up, but they was way out of port. And this is when they was talking about they was having a strike. Well, they called me from China, they wasn't having a strike. It was an embargo. Same when them oil tankers was in Philadelphia at Sun Oil, they was sitting there. Remember we was talking about that, about November, a couple months, offloading. Drip, 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 it was an embargo. See, so what they're making them do is they're using up all of the stock. Obama signs executive orders for possible martial law in August of 2016. Yeah, that's the reason why. Because they, because by August,
JL 15, right?
No, that's martial law. It already is martial law. But the reason why is because you're not going to make it through this year. This is another reason why some of these things I've been talking, because I already know half people ain't going to listen anyway. But we don't have time for it. But to give you some kind of sense so you can survive this thing. So if you have an account in the bank, it's not yours, it's theirs. That's #1. And as soon as you try to withdraw it, they're going to shut down the banks. So what you don't have, you don't have. Then what you do have, they're going to inflate and deflate at the same time. I know it sounds like a contradiction, but this is what's going to happen. Now the oil prices that you've been dealing with in these last 6 months or a year, that has gone down for regular gas as low as 111, which we got in Canada. And now it's back up to about 229 in that area. The deal, just like the sister was talking about earlier, now keep in mind, before they dropped them buildings in New York, that was when Germany, their #1 ally, asked for their gold back. Because the military message was they're going to interfere with that pipeline coming from Iran through Iraq, through Syria, to the port, and the development of pipeline in Palestine, which is under occupation by the U.S. corporation colony styled as Israel. So Germany asked for their gold back. They told them to take a hike. They sent diplomats to New York. They told them to take a hike. Within 2 months, them buildings came down, and they say Muslims did it, which everybody in the rest of the world knows it was them. Of course, the gold disappeared. Now, meanwhile, they murdered Gaddafi and stole his gold. Because meanwhile, what people don't understand, London was being drained of their gold by the Manchurian families. Because remember, when you look at the political operations, you've got to think Vatican, London, District of Columbia as one unit. When you don't think that way, you don't understand the politics. So, the position of the Asiatic families is this. Can't beat the beast directly, so starve him. So all the instruments that they have created against the Moorish Empire that are in the world's treasuries, and their quantitative easing is accelerating that. So they also stole Saudis' gold to back up because they're losing power. So they stole the Saudis' gold, who was in agreement with that blackmail stuff with Kissinger and Nixon in 1971 that set up what is known as the petrodollar. So, and this is where other nation states would have to convert their currency into dollars for any energy source transfer in the world markets. Then they use that power to set up ops, secret ops, black ops, etc., to actually rob and undermine other nations. In other words, the nations were paying for their own wars against themselves. So the same thing they did to us, they've been doing to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world say, all right, this is over. You know, so they can't beat your army, so they ain't buying your bonds. So now all of these instruments that they've been creating, the birth certificates, the marriage certificates, the certificates of title, and all of these original manufacturers of titles of origin on all these vehicles, that's been backing all their bonds, is dead paper. Not unlike in The Wizard of Oz, where the house falls on the witches and her stocks curl up, stocks curl up, etc. And so you see the restoration taking place. So all of the shenanigans that they do and all of the quantitative easing, which is another way of printing more counterfeit on the counterfeit, is a useless exercise. So what's going to happen and what they're doing, what they've really already done, they just haven't made it public, is they've created what is called a domestic dollar. That's gold back, but heavily reduced, roughly around 80%.
I see it says it's about 15 cents to a US dollar.
Well, it's a little less than that, you know. Really, it's little.
It said 15.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, yeah, 15 cents. It's,
Yeah, that's what they're telling the public, it's less than that. Now, because it's already been less than that, you know, yeah, well. Now, see, so this is what's going to happen. Right now, you can get say a loaf of bread for, say, roughly around 3 notes, three Federal Reserve notes. $2.98, 3 better bread, $4 in that note, right? Then overnight, the same thing with the fuel. You know, people gonna wake up one morning and they're gonna go to the gas station, and fuel will be 8 notes a gallon. It's called inflation. Half the cars, they ain't gonna have jobs anyway. They're gonna park them because they're not gonna be able to run them. All right, then of course they're gonna get crazy. That's what they got King Alpha for. State of emergency. That's what they're telling. They're preparing you already. That's what they're telling you. And they already know by August it will probably be hitting full force. Meaning, all these things we've been telling people for years, no one will be able to deny them no more. Because even stuff like this, we're not going to be able to do as comfortably because we won't be able to afford to do it. Because everybody's not going to be able to afford to run down here. And it's going to be more use of public transportation. They're taking city lots and building a lot of more tall buildings, which most of it is going to be living quarters because Europeans are going to come back in the cities because they're not going to be able to afford to be riding back and forth to the suburbs. And so you're going to have all these abandoned properties all over the place. So like they did Detroit. Now, when I was in Detroit, past year, not this past year, last time I was in there, I apologize because I moved around so much I don't even remember dates. But I think 205, I think 207 was the last time I was there. Was that 207? Anyway, whatever. They literally turned half the city off. And everybody had an option to go on the other side of the city, pick a house. And then those who straggled, they turned the water off too. And you could ride down Detroit, I'm telling you, and miles and miles and miles in the most beautiful architecture. You know that movie Will Smith, Legend, where they showed you like the cities with the trees growing and the grass growing in the street? Honestly, that was Detroit. real that people could tell you, but if you weren't physically there, you wouldn't believe it. It was like, you know, you'd be busy here, and they say, don't walk 2 blocks down. But as soon as you start walking, as soon as you start getting away from the civilized, then it's danger. Literal jungle. Shit happens. In other words, people would leave their house, go to work, come back, their pipes was going, and the siren was going. I was going to Constantine Hall to do the lecture. Flew in. They came pick me up at the airport. And I didn't want to go to Weston because they, you know, got the hotel and stuff for me, but I wanted to go, you know, into town with the people. So I went in town, and Grand Chief Geronimo and Nolioso wanted me to come stay at their house, so I stayed at their house. And we stopped at, got a seafood platter, and there was a house on the corner as we turned on their street. Beautiful house, grass so well kept, it looked like astroturf, it was so well kept. Green, trimmed. There was a Mercedes and a Cadillac in the driveway. It had the wrought iron gates, well painted, you know, almost like a picture. It had double doors, you know, dark stained wood double doors, polished brass handles, beautiful house. Arched windows on the side, well-wrapped hose around on the side of the building, beautiful house. You know, one of the houses that, you know, like when you ride past, you gotta look at it. So well kept and beautiful architecture. Anyway, so we got up Saturday, they called, they wanted me to come down to Constantine Hall to tell them where I wanted the speakers, how I wanted the bleachers, so you know how they do when they set up stuff, right? So, when we came out, that morning, going to Constantine Hall, the cars was going out of that house, out of the driveway. The front doors were off, the gates were off, and the big window on the side was open. And it was like, you know, what happened? You know, and they said, oh, you're welcome to Detroit. Overnight, people move and the houses are stripped. They said, Geronimo said, oh, I was up there, I stayed up there for a while. It was, I went up there to do lecture, but actually, it was sort of like that and a vacation type thing. And we're setting up order of the Great Seal there because a lot of people was misrepresenting Great Seal. And so I was up there, and then I was cleaning up some of their concepts, getting some of the books to them, like the lesson book, 14 type stuff. And I fixed their windowsill, which was rotting, because they had like arched, beautiful architecture, but the way the houses were designed, there was a catch from the A-frame as it settles almost so like a hip section on the roof, and it would come through the brick face and rock the windowsills. So, and they had windows downstairs that the contractors were supposed to put in last year, and they were still sitting there because the windows were rotting, and it, you know, cost so much for all the other stuff. So, you know, I was there, so I said, well, I'll fix it. You know, because it ain't nothing to me, is what I do. You know, so I made a box and I made casts. I took a measurement, I made casts, did molding so it could have the, you know, the molding trim to match the architecture. And so I did fiber concrete, and I made casts, put a couple rebars, and I made sills. And I let them set for 2 days, pulled the windows out, set the sills, and put the new windows in. So all the wood sills were out in front of the house, and you know, so I was there, I did that. Then when people discovered I did that, and everybody's calling, trying to get me to stay up there, they said, you can go get a house, big houses that would cost here, like in this area, like $200-300 grand, you can get for $5 grand. And like the regular house was like $100,000 here, $1,000. Just please move in. I'm serious, that's what it was. Whole side of the city, lights were out. and you could ride miles and miles. You know how it is in Detroit, you know, because they have very straight streets. In some of the areas, they have very straight streets. You could ride miles straight, dark. And then you see a house with lights, with bars all around it. And then you ride some more miles and it's just dark. You see another house dimly lit, Detroit. Well, guess what? That's the pattern. And it's coming already there now. Any bank account that you have is already claimed by them. It doesn't belong to you. You're not first operative. They are. Any fiat that you have in the bank, that's anybody, it's already declared a secured, unsecured loan to the bank.
What about fiat that you have that's not in the bank?
This is where the inflation is going to be. If you have anything of any value, and if you don't convert it to something, what is called hard value, they're going to inflate it. So, like, so you'll go to the store for a loaf of bread, and it'll all of a sudden be 10 notes for a loaf of bread. And if you got more left, then it'll be $15 for a loaf of bread. And you got left, then it's going to be $20 for a loaf of bread. And after a while, you're going to try to reserve, and it'll become useless to you to spend it because it's going to just simply be worthless.
So you need to convert it into the
Hard current. Now, this is the deal. Don't get caught in the gold thing, not that golden insurance. If you can get coins, silver coins, which they're going to make more and more difficult, because that's really where it's at. Because the trade will be done mostly in silver coin. Gold is a backup. You start using your gold, you're not going to get any change, so you ain't going to last long. So we're talking real world gold. Other deal of it is get them old galvanized cans that they used to have years ago that you don't see too much anymore. They used to be the trash cans, the galvanized cans. Dry beans, things like that. Buy water filtration systems. Alcohol, peroxide, stack up on toilet paper, paper towels. Learn how to extract water, because they're going to contaminate all the water anyway.
Yeah, it's not. When you say water filtration systems, when you say water filtration systems, you're saying like basically capturing water and designing a system in your house to filter
the water that they ban, and that's rainwater. Because anything that goes through the system, they're putting fluoride in so it coats your pineal gland. You know, so that's why they put fluoride in. They tell you other things about the fluoride, but it's really to coat the pineal gland.
rat poison and stuff like that.
Yeah, because the nature of the aquarian energy is going to wake up them glands anyway. So this is another reason for chemtrails and stuff like that, to give people Alzheimer's. That's why they put aluminum particles in it, as well as barium,
Aluminum,
and other viruses to kill off the population, to kill the bees, so the food source is neutralized. You know, it's the Inquisition operations. But the point of it is that yeah, that's King Alfred. But again, now, so you know, it's like this. This is another reason they want to do the alleged cashless society, because whereas if you have it physical, they got to go through a lot of different programs to steal it. With digital, they can just have the blackout and your account's gone. You know, and of course this is the reason why Bitcoin really doesn't work. Yeah. Anything that's digital, you know, fiat is the control mechanism. It's still not the reality. You can't run from fiat to fiat and solve the problem. You know, so this is why they're in trouble. Now, of course, people who continue to have faith in the system, faith and fiat are related, if you understand, because it's based in blind faith. And so the world has lost faith in that's
the fiat.
Yeah, and so it's over as far as that's concerned. Now, the other deal is So the inflation, this is what it is, Dr. Nyla. So the inflation is, so if you have like, say 10,000 notes, just as an example, of alleged cash.
I get for that.
Huh?
That's like I have.
Right? And what it would say, what someone would trade for.
But they're in
Yeah.
$100
Notes.
and so I
Yeah.
was thinking maybe I should make
What they
them
would trade
smaller.
right now, yes, you would, because, let me tell you.
Because they all in 100.
Look, let me tell you, all right, this is, wake up right now. And this is recently. They already passed some colorable legislation in different territories, state jurisdictions, where they're not going to accept them hundreds,
I mean, that's all I got.
to lock them out. No, that's what it is. See, no, even if you have it, they're going to make it so you don't have it. That is useless. Meaning that if you can't trade it,
It's no good, it doesn't, yeah.
exactly. Please look it up and see what you find. Ban on $100 bills. Ban on $100 bills. Just and then see what comes up. Right? And so the deal is they're not going to be accepting them. Now also the other sponge that is going on, even with this, when you look at this Pope Francis operation, this is where the pacification is of them putting Harriet Tubman on the 20-note bill.
Yeah.
So we can get them and.
No, it's a pacification.
Yes, sir.
If Harriet Tubman was here, they'd lynch her. Please stop. But yes, for real. They want. It's a pacification. See, because the real deal is the whole bonds has been on us. Now, people don't know history.
But then aren't they keeping Jefferson on the other side? Like,
Say it again?
image of, who's on it now?
Jackson.
Jackson, whoever's on it now, they keep them on,
Jackson.
image of them on the opposite side. So they said,
Really?
we still got,
Mm-hmm.
they make it like a collage of images and
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, but the real deal is really understanding the history.
I need to get that.
You know, whereas our people are still in that mental servitude.
Yep,
You know.
that's something special.
Because what they're doing, it's like, it's a metaphysical way of transferring energy.
Okay, can we get 5,000 ones?
Yeah. And so what the deal of it is like, they need roughly just to break even. We're talking about no profits whatsoever. They need roughly around 30 notes at current value, which is also going down. Federal Reserve, just to break even for any transfer of energy. It's running around 26 notes now, which means all of the derivative instruments related to energy, it's broken and they can't get it back even if they started. It's already past the apex.
Shouldn't the charges for it anyway?
It's already past the apex. And this is why you see the gas prices rising a little bit at a time, because it was done to kill the fracking industry in Pennsylvania. See, because the U.S. corporation had already set up a plan of being what they loosely refer to as energy independent from the OPEC states within a 5-year period. On top of the fact that they have other oil here. So the Saudi Arabians who agreed to that pact with Richard Nixon is killing it to kill the derivatives. So even if they have the fiat or control, it's going to be worthless for them to recover. You see the point? So that's inflation. And just like Tropicant talk about in House Joint Resolution 192, where he says or exposes that inflation is a corrupt way or an irresponsible way that irresponsible governments, you know, tax their citizens, so to speak. But again, that's based in this. But overall, keep this in mind. This is the real thing that I'm really throwing out there. Because a lot of people are claiming to be, you know, the creditor versus the debtor, pardon me, these are designations of positions without understanding that their claim on the estate is invalid. If they're not Moorish Americans, they have no claim. And so this is, again, why you have a lot of Europeans now starting to tell a lot of truths, because the middle class and its upper level just right there is being dissolved. They're not being thrown on the bus, they're thrown under the bus. So this is why they're exposing stuff like that, like you never hear say maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Even though we've been telling people this stuff for years. You know, we were like looked at as being out to lunch, anti-God, anti-government, a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, so much truth coming out that you can't keep up with it. You know, and so, now, so here's the head of the entire Roman Curia giving you in a synopsis both the law and the history and the truth of who the bonds are actually on. So can anybody that's not African American, i.e. Moorish American, be the holder in due course of anything? No. Can they be the creditors? Does it say white Christian sovereign, or white Americans, or Indians? This African Americans, this whole fraud was built on the theft of our birthright. Backing up Noel Drawley 150%. And it even giving you reference points, so when you do the research, you'll find the information. And so immediately your concepts will change. The problem that you have is as people start making adjustments, you know, they're already well on the path of killing their estates. So people is kind of caught that don't already have this information, they're going to be on a learning curve, and their houses and their estates are going to be dismantled right from under them. And however they handle this thing, you know, many are going to crack. You know, because it's not that, you know, we can do sardines and crackers and it's hors d'oeuvres to us, you know. But Europeans are used to having sirloin and, you know, lobster Newburg and stuff like that. They get strange. You know, they can't handle that transfer too good. You know, I'm down with noodles and noodles type thing. Yeah.
Is that because you're inside?
Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Do you make some oodles and noodles, man?
You gotta be beat up.
Yeah, she chopped the vegetables up, man.
Noodles champ.
Yeah, I don't like to pick on her. When I come over and I say, hey, D, I ain't the real oodles and noodles. And did she have the nerve to talk about she had some too? Yeah. But anyway, it's really good. But Europeans can't handle this stuff because they start killing everything, each other. You know. But anyway, are there any comments in relationship to these principles? Understand that these are reference points. But the other point that I'm making is, as they begin to come after your estates, and they will, and they are coming after your estates, you know, what's left to try to mitigate the pressure that's on them. It can't be satisfied because it's too vast. It's a black hole. However, you know, like criminals, you know, don't have a conscience. And even though they're losing, they're going to try to foreclose on everybody's property. So, you know, people that are renting, they're going to raise the rent to run them out of business. You got a house, they're going to try to run you out of it. You know, no different than in Philadelphia, they put in 3-cent tax, not on the soda, 3-cent tax on an ounce of the soda. So if you got 16 ounces, a 16-ounce bottle of soda above the cost, 3 cents tax for each ounce. So 3 times 16, a regular 16-ounce soda costs more than what it costs now. So that's another way to hide the inflation that is that's happening. It's not going to happen. That's why they're trying to do this stuff. You know, and then they're trying to say it's for the schools, for the children. They ain't going to school for what? They ain't going to have no jobs. I mean, this stuff is just, you know.
But what do you think they're trying to prove with all these car shows? You see it everywhere. And that's trying to keep their continuity of their...
They're trying to maintain the cabal. The cabal is the treason. Is these misprision operations. It's collapsing. And so, what it is essentially, no countries are buying their bonds. So, the so-called bailout they did is a de facto nationalization operation. So you gotta understand this.
When they did the backyard?
When they did the bailouts of GM, Ford, Chrysler, all them,
Pretty bad.
that's a de facto nationalization. All right? Because they're not the heirs, but they're in control. It's a de facto operation. But it was backed, again, with Manchurian gold. So Manchurians are pulling all their gold, and so they're not going to get no bailout, so they're going to do a bail-in. This is what House Joint Resolution 2847, I've been telling you all for 5 or 6 years, and warning you so that you could do something ahead of time, because if you haven't done it, it's already done. So if you want to test it, go try to get a lump sum of finance to treat you like a damn criminal. It ain't your account. You know, so you're not going, so, you know, even if you're going to do something, if you're going to do something with it, you can't accumulate enough, and then if you keep on coming back, they just close the account. I'm serious. You know, and so, you know, I mean, you know, people ain't gonna listen anyway, but, you know, you've been told. You know, but things are going to accelerate so fast, and you're going to get a 3-month window, roughly 3 months. And they will accept some notes for some trade-off of hard assets. Then after that, it'll be dead. You know how I used to get the Confederate fiat in the cereal boxes when we were little? You get some Jacks and then you get the Confederate. Well, I'm like, for real. Now, so when you're looking at this thing like this martial law in August, why are they telling you this? Because it's true. Because they already tell you. And this is why, like when you see Obama, when his speech at the dinner, he made it into a roast, and he says something about the end of the republic. And then that's part of the controversy for people who really know this history, and you see them criticizing that thing. That's what they're really talking about, because he's saying the republic is dead. Yeah. Because he already knows the state of emergency. And so you know this thing with Hillary and Sanders and Trump, this dog and pony show. So those who know really, truthfully, as it were, as it stands, Obama was the last president of the corporate entity. Operations as you know it. I don't care who gets in that position. Everything that happens from this point on is transitional. Now, the deal of it is, he's out the White House. IRS has moved to Chicago and they bricked up all the windows. Yeah, for real.
They moved out of Puerto Rico and Guam, right?
No, I'm talking about the ones that's left here. They moved to Chicago. They moved some of the office of the United States Corporation from Washington to Cuba, near the Guantanamo thing. These are realities that most of the masses aren't aware of. So, I mean, you know, so when you see stuff like that, when they come out, if it's the mainstream news like that, readily available, understand it's already done. If they tell you stuff like this, it's already done. It's not going to be, it's already done. It's already implemented. Yeah. So that's the deal. So use your intelligence, do what you will, take what you have.
Paychecks go,
The best way you can put it, hard asset. Just put it hard asset. So don't think just gold and silver coin like that. Because really, there will never be what you call a lock transfer of gold and silver coinage. They will still have fiat, but it will be gold backed. As you say, the restoration of the... See, because the coup of 61 was the abrogation of the gold clause. Article 1, Section 10. As well as the suspension of habeas corpus, so that they create the platform by which the dark priesthood could operate and convert the estate of the Moors held, the nobles who they overthrew, i.e. Moorish Americans who they designated as African Americans, to back the debt. And this has been the operations. It's being dismantled now, not so willingly by all parties, but as the order comes down from the top. And with the assistance of the Manchurian families and other Asiatic nations, including the true Americans, who refer to themselves as the Mint nations.
Mint?
Mint, M-I-N-T, that's the true American states amongst what is known as the OAS, Organization of American States, who are tired of these Europeans claiming to be the Americans and the American president and all this stuff that has been promoting the misconceptions that are contaminating the education systems, because they already know that these operatives here are the presidents and of the board of directors of the United States Corporation Company, registered in France, doing business at Morocco with its main ports at Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Do you understand? And acting as imposters, as if they're the sovereign government, and the heirs of the true government think they're black. And this is the problem that you have, and world economies are collapsing while we're all playing this game. And they can't afford to wait on us anymore. Because remember, Drew Ali brought this stuff to us 102 years ago. Now, nations' economies are collapsing. And it's all based in this. All this based in this. Meanwhile, most people don't know it. Others don't believe it. Now the Pope, the Don himself, is telling you. So they're trying to accelerate because they're being under pressure. And then plus they're getting free flying lessons without parachutes and stuff like that. You know, they're being taught how to use nail guns to solve headaches. You know, all kind of different stuff. And so, you know, it's kind of inspirational to start doing things halfway right. But then the structure, the demon structure doesn't support, because the demon structure is de facto. So you can't get de jure out of color. And this is why you see all these different promised methodologies, you know, UCCs. Now they're trying to authenticate the birth certificate bank bond, making people
Take
think.
that back right through the de facto government, aren't you? I mean, when you're going to DC or wherever you're going and sending stuff there.
All this stuff, yeah, it's a merry-go-round to buy time. Their road, they're not going to honor it. They can't. See, it's not so much that
It's
they
not
won't.
within their.
Just put it this way, it's not that they won't, they can't even. You know, it's sort of like, once you understand this thing, you know, you can't get de jure out of de facto. It can't happen. The same way that you can't print gold and you can't print silver, no matter how good the paper looks. You know, you can't take a de facto, so see, let's use our common sense. The US democracy is a political platform created with the coup of '61, solidified in 1871, to essentially create subdivisional agencies to institutionalize, manage, and administrate peonage, and i.e. connotative slavery at North America, using defeated Moors to back the bonds created under fraud for the U.S. government, which was really a private corporate entity pretending to be the legitimate government, which it never was.
That was the point I was trying to make, is they've always been fraudulent.
It was created in fraud,
Right.
It remains in
And
fraud,
it's backfiring on them.
meaning it's imploding.
Yeah.
Like any other fraud, it has a cycle. Usually fiat currencies, which is not a new thing, has roughly a 30-year cycle, and then it implodes. The reason why the operations of the dark priesthood have lasted so long has more to do with the operations of Kissinger and Nixon in '71. That's why the creation of the what they call the petrodollar. So even though the people here for the most part are miseducated and don't know, it's still the operations of economics on the planet. And so other nations, you know, states, people aren't asleep to this because their economies are running. And now this stuff is imploding. And this is another thing that's been happening, just like you see in recent years, right? In recent years, where you see the U.S. corporation company has changed their fiat for the last couple of years twice, within the last, because what happened is that other nation states started creating counterfeit fiat on the counterfeit fiat that the Europeans were creating on their own bonds in order to control other people's economies. And so it no longer is useful to the creator of the counterfeit because others are creating counterfeit on their counterfeit, some of which is better than their counterfeit, which they keep, that's why they gotta keep on changing the fiat. And so it's no longer useful. And so that the very fact of that process inflates it, which means the cost becomes unsustainable. So they, in order to even supplant that, they had to what? Shut down industries and move them to other countries in order to balance this thing out to maintain the construction. But in the process, they removed their own tax base. Now they're caught. You see, because the other nation states aren't allowing them to rate them the way they did here. So what they've done is nationalize. This is why you see things like what's taking place in Argentina right now, what you're seeing Chavez do with the sugar fields, cane fields, and oil, and the corporate and the hedge fund investments they had in apartment buildings in Venezuela, etc. This is why Venezuela is under attack now. You know, with the U.S. ops, you know, neutralizing their economy. You know, because Chavez nationalized. You know, so when you look at these dynamics, what they've done, they've made so many enemies that even their allies, Germany per se, they've been doing what? Over 3,600 corporate contracts with Russia. You understand? So the sanctions that the U.S. corporations set on Russia and stuff like that don't damn count. And so, and then they ain't buying the U.S. bonds. And so you got to look at, once you understand that it's not money, there are liens against the Moorish Empire that is the secret government that is asleep and the heirs still talking black, which is incompetent. And then their leaders lead them down these Negro paths, meaning that, because they got the skull and bones payoff. Meanwhile, the people are behind the learning curve, and the world is changing exponentially fast, and they really need to be educated quite quickly on issues that ain't been in their knowledge base. It hasn't been in their belief degree, because they deal with beliefs, they don't deal with knowledge. And so now they become a liability. Now the Europeans trying to kill them off without looking like he's trying to do it. Then they're being attacked by, what, the Chinese, who's really, they propped up their economy for the last 50 years, and the masses don't know that because they be thinking, you know, these Chinese coming here behind the half of Philadelphia and half Detroit, which is really what's been happening. And they don't understand is because they're using them pristine bonds that nobody else wants to buy all these estates, which weakens them. So this is, when you understand this politics, you understand why J.P. Morgan sold that $4.5 billion so-called dollar headquarters in Lower Manhattan to the Manchurian families for $7.8 million versus the 4.8 billion that the buildings were, with one of the world's largest vaults and a tunnel directly to the Federal Reserve in New York. And so now people who don't understand this politics that we're just talking right now, they don't get it because they think the United States is a country. You see? So this is where the Pope has to tell you, no, it's a corporation, and it's part of the Vatican Crown Empire. So now, naivety is gone, now what you going to do? Grow up. Now, while people's waiting around deciding how they want to accept or not accept this information, their estates are going to be unraveled while they playing with this information, because they're not going to be prepared to handle what's going to hit them. You understand? And so, your advantage of knowing this information, even though you won't get hurt, knowing what things are going to take place, you know, you don't necessarily have to step into doo-doo on the lawn, because now you know it's doo-doo and it ain't brown grass. You know what I mean? Whereas people who don't understand this stuff is confused, don't know what to do, don't have any knowledge of herbs, the different trees, the seasons, how to purify water. They don't have any connection to the land. They don't know it's their land. They think they're going to go to Africa on the other side and all that stuff. They don't know if they leave these shores, they ain't coming back in, and they ain't going to be let into other countries. They're going to be on them borders, just like them other fake Jews claim to be somebody that they're not. When Hitler nationalized Germany, find themselves jumping off of ships because they're going to be starving. And if they want to swim to someplace else, and of course, the rude awakening that they left on, which is what that French was from school, Malcolm, you know, and they're not going to have what you call free movement. And so they're going to get out there in this cruel, cruel world and find themselves with no support systems. Then they become a liability, and as soon as they take a loaf of bread that don't belong to them, they're not going to go to jail. They're going to be eliminated from breathing. You know, so all the things that they really ain't been used to, they're going to have to adjust to very quickly. And if they don't have a support system, it means organized body politics. This is where Drawley told us, Moore warned them, he says, you need each other now, you're going to need each other even more so after a while. Because you're going to go through this transition period. And he says, the day's going to come, you'll be walking down the street, see a $20 bill, you won't even waste your time to bend over and pick it up. He's telling you what's going to happen so that when this comes, you have time to do something in your life with your energy that you can transfer now to set up things so that your family can survive the transitional stage. And he also told you that industry in North America is going to come to a screeching halt. When it starts up again, it will start up in favor of the Asiatics. Can be no more blunt than that. And of course, people who dismiss them as the lunchbox will find themselves not prepared. And it's not coming, it's already here. And the deal of it is it's going to accelerate within these next months, which is why we've been emphasizing this stuff in this last year. You know, but we have to depend on people's own honesty to their own honor of their mothers and fathers so that they're heritable to their estate. Because you got people that's logically been controlling it, don't want you to have it, not because they want to be mean, but that means, you know, Susie ain't going to college. That means there ain't going to be no, you know, filet mignon type thing that they used to. You know, a lot of these places where they've been expending large fiat as a norm, they're not going to be able to do. They're coming to the city as quickly as possible to try to gentrify them because they already know they're not going to have free egress. There's going to be checkpoints all over the damn place. And they're not going to have the fiat to be, or the access to what you call regular energy, like you know, walk up the street a couple blocks and stop at a gas station. Well, most of them is going to be closed down. They're going to have what you call center points. Now, this is again why other car companies, in spite of the resistance, are starting to do hybrid vehicles, preparing you for the transition. Because you ain't going to be having those gas stations anyway. So you're going to be going, run out of gas, so you're going to be on the highway some damn where. And they're not going to let it sit, they're going to take them and crush them. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's, you know, horse and buggy for a minute. You know, so it's going to be, it's not ugly, but it will be ugly for people who are used to comfort. You know, so the things that we've been used to here, you know, using up more than half the world's resources while producing not a damn thing, ain't gonna go on no more. It's over. If you don't have a skill, you can't produce anything, reach your hand for something, you're gonna pull back a no. Reach again, they're gonna stop you from breathing. So a lot of things that people aren't used to, they're gonna have to get used to real quick. This is again why the Europeans trying to get all the guns. Because they already know, whereas we always march and pray, you know, they rape our children, stomp our people into the ground. We march and pray. The only time we don't march and pray when they designate some women and children in some other country that ain't Christians, that is controlling some resources, then they'll go murder them to keep this European in power, then come back and do Negro marches and complain about the black soldiers, then get black badges. This is what they always do. Well, that ain't gonna happen no more either. You know, so all of these things that have been the traditions here is gonna come to a screeching halt. And those who have no honor are going to be disappeared. And then after the dust settles, you know, because chaos is going to be for a minute. But they can't allow it to keep continuing. But they're going to allow it to continue just long enough to reduce the population enough to these people could start playing these nigger games, and they'll do just like them other people did. They heard about nationality, didn't they? Didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Uh-huh. Then whatever's left, they're going to try to build on, you know, whatever's left. But systems, there's two things taking place. We're at a period where they can't have what you call gradual, in some areas, gradual transfer of technologies. So what they're going to do is shut a lot of things, just shut them down, and then hard introduce other technologies that's been held back by both necessity and by pressures. And so we're not dealing with the confederations, which you all know about. I don't even need to go into that. Just dealing with the fundamentals, because your problems have to be solved here. And so, meaning that, and see, now the combustion engine, what that's been running for a little over 100 years, in its general nature unchanged. But the technology for more efficient operations has always been known, even from the beginning. That has been held back. And then you've got what you call saturation. And so from a principle of saturation in manufacture, people at the North have what you call so many material things that by the nature of the operations of the corporate entities of the Roman Curia, in order for them to keep this fraud going on, they have to neutralize, or what you call make things obsolete within months, not in years. So that means people got a lot of expensive toys that are costly, that are always obsolete within 6 months, and it can't continue and it's saturated. And so you look at the multiple levels of service necessary for machinery, cars, tin cans, that are really obsolete even while they're being built, that take up a lot of space and require a lot of infrastructure to maintain something that they know is long since obsolete. They're just pretty. And so the rest of the world is getting together to release technology outside of the order of the cabal. And this is where you see a lot of this other friction going on. And so you see the oligarchies of the world in what you would call lock neck competition under the guise of international competition, because it's really run by oligarchs. Good.
Hey, Taj, did that have something to do with what happened to Russia, where their cars were destroyed? It looked like a bomb.
Yes, it was a bomb. It was a bomb. Now, this is what it is. Volkswagen, now you got to remember, Volkswagen is German, right? Germany was the U.S. corporation's #1 ally, right? They stole Germany's gold and dropped their buildings, right? Germany has over 3,600 corporate contracts with Russia. U.S. corporation had sanctions on Russia because they was interfering with the pipeline, which is why they did this Crimea War thing. Right?
Yes.
Now, so, Volkswagen engineers have what you call an injection system, carburation system. You can call it, even though the fundamental carburation system is generally obsolete, but the fundamental technology of it has other angles that they didn't release to the public. Whereas they could mix, what they did is old technology, where you have the mixture of steam, just basic water, and also you have recirculation, because you know, because the heat also creates moisture. You ever see how cars run and the tailpipe drifts water?
Condensation, right.
So that recirculation as well as tanks of water, because people's concept of how these elements work is incorrect. It's like water doesn't put out a fire, water cools a fire, but water actually burns. This is why you can see fires, when you have real hot fires, they can be standing there for hours putting water on it, with 50 hoses and the fire don't go out.
It seems to get more and more big.
Yeah. Yes. That's why. Now, deal, point I'm cutting through the chase. The technicians created a carburation system, which they always had, but they perfected a carbureted system and were contemplating on releasing it. And this is where carbureted system with Volkswagen could get roughly about 140 miles to a gallon by mixing hot steam from the natural heat of the engine created by the gas and recirculating the moisture created by condensation back into the system under high pressure, the same way that you use superchargers, etc., and actually create the torque pressure in an ordinary engine that you would get from an otherwise diesel operation by mixing the principle of steam engines, which they used to do, combined with electrical hybrid systems using solar panels within the skylights and stuff that became part of the car anyway, with a fine line, just like you have your heating system. You know how you have your defroster in the glass, like they used to have?
Yes.
All right. Instead of the air, you had the wires in there, would charge the batteries. And then they have certain advanced technologies in the lithium batteries that are charged quicker with more output. And so they have cars and setups that go from 140 and some smaller units closer to 200. So and then remember, they came for the gold and they told them to take a hike, and then they dropped them buildings in New York. So not just that, computer type city set up type thing for both space programs and other technologies, and advanced communications was in that area too. So all of a sudden, fertilizer bomb, just like they do over here in Oklahoma with this fertilizer bomb, yeah. Saying they stored for, yeah. You see, you have that nuclear explosion there. That's why it's Volkswagen.
And they were having trouble with
That's
the
why.
CEO.
And then you see this.
They
It's
did
all of a sudden this
something- they put that down.
confusion about the diesel engine.
Yeah.
All of that is the real politics. You already know what it is. And at the same time, you know, the emissions problems that you have with any diesel engine, you have with any other diesel engine. And you already know they made adjustments with all of them to get around these different emissions type things. But at the same time, you know and I know that German diesel engines and their engineering was always a step ahead of most of the other, engines as far as technology is concerned. So that operation was totally political. You know it is, I know it is. But that would have more to do, consider that 140 plus mile per gallon steam and gas engine It's not a gas engine, not a steam engine. It's a hybrid of them both with support systems of electricals. Then plus using nanotechnology for the bearings, which reduce what is called frictional mass, so they even run smoother. You know, and that was introductory. So then, as soon as you have introductory, then they get the bugs out, then you got even better, you know, after a couple of years of running with it, when they look at all that stuff. So all of a sudden, you know, a meteor came out, yeah, right, and, you know, oh, cow doo-doo blew up, no, it wasn't.
And it seemed like it blew all, I mean.
Yeah, so if you look at that exposure, anybody that's been in, you know, anywhere around military ordnance, look at that mushroom halo, and the way it stays and lingers, just a bright light, and just flicks like that. That's nuclear. Everybody knows that, you know. And that's another reason. And this is why, like, shortly after that, when half of New York shut down, computer system, this is just a counter move. You know, and this is another reason why the Manchurians, you know, taking their role back. And so these, keep in mind when you're looking at this Pope's correspondence, you know, you had P2 Masons, including Francis, went to meet